Good evening. It's the 7th of March 2024. I am Dr. Rajiv Sriram, and I'd like to address a matter before the medical fraternity involving amendments or proposed amendments to the Medical Board Act 2007. And speaking with some of my colleagues this evening, I get the sense of relief because many doctors have mistakenly believed that they have successfully registered their objections to amendments to the Medical Board Act, which specifically amendments 12B, section 12B to D, which give the council the powers to deregister or unlicense or refuse renewal of licensure for physicians who have not submitted evidence of completion of satisfactory number of CMEs, an arbitrary number. Now, this is a novel, very novel legislation in our jurisdiction, and from the outset, it should be stated that I think the vast majority of doctors agree in continued medical education and would like to benefit from it and would like to have their patients benefit from it. However, I think we have put the cart before the horse because the infrastructure for these CMEs, what strangely for an unknown reason, the Medical Council has now deemed as CPDs or continuous professional development. We all know it as CMEs, right? We have not provided a good platform for the provision of these CMEs. And I think that before we enact any legislation that allows the restriction or the striking of anyone's medical license by the council, before we enact any such legislation, we should try to develop the CME platform first, and this should be running for several years. So any such legislation, I think, is premature. But as mentioned earlier, I think many of the physicians believe that they have successfully registered their objections to the Act. But I'd like to make it abundantly clear that under no circumstance has the medical board, meaning the members of the board, meaning the persons registered or physicians registered to the medical board. So we are the board, just to be very clear. The physicians are the board. So at no point in time was the medical board or the medical fraternity asked for their vote on amendments to the Act. And this must be very, very clear. There were two instruments, which are regulations. These are not legislations that have any power to punish or to govern or to suspend any individual. The Act contains clauses that allow the council to function in this regard. And at no point in time was the medical fraternity and the board itself asked to comment or to approve or disapprove or to object to the amendments to the Act. However, we were at one point in time asked to comment on or submit our approval or objections to regulations which are simply addendums to the Act or were simply put in order to operationalize the Act. So we can discuss those regulations ad nauseum, but they have little or no impact upon the clauses within the Medical Board Act to which we are aggrieved. Now, on the 6th of March, which is yesterday, I submitted this letter to the Medical Board, and it has to do with amendments to the Act. And I'm going to, for public record, I will just read it here tonight. So this letter, again, addressed to the Medical Board, which is Building F2, Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex, Uriah Butler Highway, West Indies, stated the 6th of March, and the caption reads, Proposed Amendments to Medical Board Act 2007. Esteemed members of the board and council, the initiative to modernize the medical board legislation to enhance ethics and clinical standards is commendable. The medical board should evolve its technical and administrative capacity to address the diverse challenges of governing a growing fraternity and a burgeoning patient load. However, considering the profound impact of these proposed amendments to the Act, the Council must give urgent attention and address the following issues before seeking vote of the board's members on any regulations. 1. Section 6A, 1 to 4, which deals with the appointment of the general manager to the board. Right? So the comment is, the portfolio of the proposed general manager must be subject to scrutiny of the membership, which will enable us, which is the board, to approve a salary for this position. A job description which details the responsibilities and powers of this appointment and the processes for appointment should be provided to the membership to ensure that the appointment is reasonable and transparent. Second point deals with section 20.1 of the Act. This section recognizes the power of the board's membership in enabling the council to act on its behalf. As registered medical practitioners, each constituting a member of the board, the medical council and the board as a whole is held by law accountable to the fraternity of qualified medical practitioners who are registered to it. The board operates as a decentralized and inclusive professional governance body, which recognizes the authority of each professional member as equal through their vote. The proposed change in designation from member of the board to registrant only serves to undermine the authority and stature of the medical practitioners who function under the Act. Amendment of the definition registrant under section 2, so the amendment is coming under section 2, should be struck and the term member of the board preserved to ensure that the power of authority and accountability are retained by the board members and the clauses of the Act remain logically consistent. And this, of course, ensures that the council, which is an administrative and executive body, continues to report back to the board, which is us. Point 3, which deals with section 12b to d. And I think that these are the clauses within the Act which are causing the most grief within the fraternity. Whereas the council should be acknowledged for its commitment to clinical governance, it must propose measures that respectfully incentivize continued medical education, otherwise known as CME internationally, without enacting onerous and punitive conditions for suspension or erasure. Under no circumstance should a suitably qualified member of the board, in good financial standing, and with no convictions or professional disciplinary action before him or her, be denied renewal of licensure to practice. And I think that this is a fair stance. Let me repeat that. Under no circumstance should a suitably qualified member of the board, in good financial standing, and with no convictions or professional disciplinary action before him or her, be denied renewal of licensure to practice. Medical practitioners who have committed years of service to the community, service and of course study, should not be threatened with suspension or erasure unless they are legally proven to be negligent or unsafe in practice. Proposed amendments to section 12A to D, that section 12A to D has been now included, these should be struck, and the attendant draft regulations for specialist registration and continued professional development should be appropriately amended. And we should be looking at ways to incentivize doctors to participate in CMEs, not CPDs. I don't see the need to change the term. CMEs, if you go on Medscape, you'll see you get CME points. We don't want to have any situation where there's confusion when you have to convert CMEs to CPDs and all sorts of things like that. You don't want that confusion introduced. So we should find ways to incentivize people, medical practitioners, to start doing CMEs. And once we have that facility and we have engendered that culture over a few years, then we can look to legislation to try to award that afterwards. Yeah. Number 4, as it stands, the Medical Board Act is remiss to exclude a provision for financial accountability, as the board manages a substantial budget which has expanded significantly through a periodic raise in membership fees. It must regard its fiduciary duty as paramount. Of priority, the Act should be amended to include a clause which proffers a detailed annual audit for review and approval by board members. So the council's operations should be subject to scrutiny by the board, and an audit should be provided. And this should be in the Act. And this is not, even though they're amending the Act, they are not amending the Act for financial transparency. And I think this is long overdue. In summary, until these objections are considered and addressed by the membership, no resolutions can be attained in earnest, and voting on any regulations are premature. I humbly request, at this time, I read this before the board, I humbly requested a 2-month deferral in this voting session to facilitate thorough deliberations and consensus by the membership. Respectfully, Dr. Rajiv Sriram. Okay, so I think the medical practitioners, they need to keep their heads on. We have to understand that we're enacting legislation, or they are proposing to enact legislation that can have very profound impact on independent practice. It can have an impact on the young doctors who, many of them, they don't even have an opportunity to practice after having graduated. And they can face a scenario in which maybe after perhaps having to work in an office that is not connected with medicine for a little while, they may find themselves saying, well, look, if they let these CMEs or CPDs lapse, all of a sudden their medical license is struck, and then they may, be instructed to go back into hospital, even older doctors who may be semi-retired and so on. So I think under no circumstance should, again, and I'm stating it, under no circumstance should a suitably qualified member of the board in good financial standing and with no convictions or professional disciplinary action before him or her be denied renewal of licensure. And I think that is definitely fair, but it's something that we have to discuss. And it's definitely, it's shocking that these amendments to our laws governing medical practice have not been brought before the board for a thorough appraisal, for debate, and for voting. So, okay, so stay tuned. Please, if necessary, you can reach out to us, or you can reach out to me, and let us keep this discussion going. Okay, thank you for your attention.